Alright, so before we move on to the next section, there is one more function that I want to discuss, which is the subtotal function. Now earlier in the course, we discussed how we could sort and group a column and then use the subtotal command. But the subtotal function is a little bit more versatile, and let me show you what I mean by that. So to start off, I'm going to insert a few rows here at the top of our spreadsheet to add some space for our subtotal. So I'm going to select row 1, then use the Excel shortcut key Control+ or Command+ if you're on Mac to insert some rows. And then right above the last name column header, I'm going to put a label saying total sales. And then in the cell right next to it is where we will place our subtotal function. So to insert our function, we need to start off by typing in the equal sign, and then we can start typing our function name. So sub, then I'm going to double click the subtotal function, and right off the bat we can tell that this function is a little bit different than others. This function is providing us a drop-down list of many other different functions. So let's click the FX button to open up our function arguments window. And the first argument is the function num, which is the number 1 to 11 that specifies the summary function for the subtotal. Well, based off this definition, we know that this argument needs a number. But which number? Well, if you ever don't quite understand how to use the function or what to place in the arguments, you can always click on Help on this function. So we are going to give this a click, and it will open up a Microsoft help link. And this will give you all the ins and outs of the subtotal function. And if we scroll down to the syntax, it provides all the numbers that the function num argument can receive. And it says numbers 1 through 11 includes manually hidden rows, while numbers 101 through 111 excludes them. And filtered out cells are always excluded. And once we get the subtotal function in our spreadsheet, I will show you what it means that it excludes filtered out cells. But let's say in our spreadsheet that we want to sum the total amount of cells. We would need to use the sum function. Well, the sum function within the subtotal function is number 9. But the subtotal function can calculate the average, the count, the max, min, and so on. So it does a lot more than just summing. But for this example, we are trying to sum a range of cells. So for our function num argument, we need to insert a 9. So let's get back to our spreadsheet. And for the first argument, we can put a 9. And for the second argument, we can select the range of cells that we want to sum, which is the entire cells column. And this time, instead of clicking on the first cell and dragging down, because if you had thousands of records, it's a little bit time consuming to drag all the way down. So what we can do is use an Excel shortcut key. So let's click in the first cell of the cells column and then press on your keyboard Control-Shift-Down arrow or Command-Shift-Down arrow. And this will select all the cells within that column. And if we click OK, we get a total of $73,630. I'm going to apply the accounting format to match our other values within our cells column. So this is the subtotal function. Well, you might be thinking, why couldn't we just use the regular sum function? Well, let me show you what the main difference is. So here we used the subtotal function, and next to it we will use the sum function. I'm just putting labels here so we know which function is which. So next to our subtotal function, let's insert the sum function. So we can type in the equal sign, sum, give the sum function a double click, select the cells that we want to sum, close parentheses, and click enter. And we get a total of 73,630, the same as what the subtotal gave us. But where the subtotal function has the upper hand is when we actually apply filters to our data. So let's say we only want to look at the total cells for the north region. Well, we can click our drop-down arrow, deselect all the checkboxes, and then check the north region. And if we click OK, look what happened to our values. The subtotal function is now giving us a total of 19,219, and our sum function stayed at 73,630. The reasoning behind this is because that the subtotal function excludes out filtered data, and the sum function does not. So if you're wanting your formulas to act more dynamic, it's important to know that some functions, like the subtotal function, has these kind of features. And we can utilize these types of functions to make our spreadsheets more effective. So try it out. Instead of summing within the subtotal function, try to calculate an average or a count or whatever, because the subtotal function can do a lot more than just sum.